You're now watching the latest updates in Egypt on Qnews. Moving on to the latest developments. On behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attended the opening session of a high-level discussion at the UN Climate Summit COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. Accompanied by Environment Minister Yasmin Fouad, Prime Minister Madbouli will join several leaders and heads of governments in roundtable discussions on key climate action topics, including mitigation, adaptation, and climate finance. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli participated in a roundtable during the high-level segment of COP29. He stated that Egypt has made significant efforts to create the necessary environments for achieving its ambitious renewable energy goal, aiming for 42% of its energy supply to come from renewable sources by 2030. Madbouli emphasized the importance of establishing a new collective target supported by the right tools to meet both current and future nationally determined climate contributions. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli emphasized Egypt's commitment to boosting trade, investment, and cooperation in key sectors, including energy, transportation, and pharmaceuticals. He shared these goals during the meeting with his Azerbaijani counterpart, Ali Azadov, on the sidelines of COP29. Madbouli also announced that a joint high-level committee between the two countries will meet in the first quarter of 2025. The Extraordinary Arab and Islamic Summit held in Riyadh has issued a draft resolution addressing the ongoing Israeli wars on Gaza and Lebanon. The summit called for global support to freeze Israel's membership at the UN and endorsed the Egyptian-Qatari mediation efforts to secure a ceasefire. Attended by more than 50 heads of state, the government from across the Arab and Islamic world, the summit also supported Egypt's initiative to form a national unity government among Palestinian factions. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration Badr Abdelati and his Somali counterpart Ahmed Ma'alem Fiqi discussed the progress of implementing outcomes from their bilateral summit as well as a trilateral summit with Eritrea. The two sides agreed to continue joint consultations on matters of mutual concern. Abdelati reaffirmed Egypt's support for Somalia's sovereignty, safety, unity, territorial integrity, state institutions, and counter-terrorism efforts, while denouncing any interference in its internal affairs. He also expressed Egypt's commitment to strengthening peace and security in Africa, especially in the Horn of Africa. Minister of Foreign Affairs Badr Abdelati and Moroccan counterpart Nasser Bourita discussed strengthening bilateral ties on various fronts. On the sidelines of the Arab-Islamic Summit in Riyadh, Abdelati emphasized Egypt's efforts to end Israeli aggression against Gaza and Lebanon, secure a ceasefire, and facilitate humanitarian aid. They also exchanged views on the Libyan crisis, Sudan, and the situation in the Horn of Africa. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi addressed key regional issues at the Arab-Islamic Summit, stressing the importance of Palestinian statehood, condemning Israeli aggression, and reaffirming Egypt's commitment to peace and support for Lebanon. For further analysis on Egypt's participation in the extraordinary Arab and Islamic Summit, we're joined from Cairo by Chairman of the Board of Al Ahram Foundation, Dr. Mohammed Faiz Farahat. Welcome to Qnews. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Firstly, let me ask you, what role should international institutions such as the UN play in supporting Egypt's mediation efforts?
Good evening for you and for all your viewers. Of course, the Egyptian role and the Egyptian mediation is highly appreciated globally. In the levels of the United Nations, we have seen a great appreciation from the Security Council and from the General Assembly for this Egyptian role, and that was expressed more than one time in different resolutions issued by the Security Council and by the United Nations. It was a clear appreciation from these organizations regarding the role played by the Egyptian country regarding providing the humanitarian aid to Gaza Strip. The Secretary General of United Nations has attended more than one time in front of Rafah crossing, praising the Egyptian role regarding the Egyptian efforts for reaching a ceasefire and also regarding humanitarian effort. This was a clear signs regarding the role of the Security Council, confirming the Egyptian role in these efforts. Also regarding the international community, the USA has been involved in these peaceful negotiations regarding a ceasefire or a truce. There has been many rounds of negotiations that happened inside Egypt with a participation of other American officials of the ICHF. It's a clear signs for the USA support and other international communities for the Egyptian rule. It's not only for the USA and for the United Nations. Other European states have been supporting the Egyptian stance. That was so clear in the bilateral summits that was held between the officials in Egypt and the officials in Europe, and also the EU role in supporting the Egyptian stance regarding the Palestinian issue. Through all those actors, the United Nations and destruction and the military and crimes that were committed by the occupation forces against the civilians. It was a violation for the international humanitarian law. Despite all of that, the occupation forces were unable to cause this forced displacement for the Palestinian people, and that because also the Egyptian rule.
So, sir, President El-Sisi has further reaffirmed Egypt's commitment to peace as the strategic choice for the region. How does this reflect Egypt's foreign policy goals, and how does it align with the broader Arab League vision?
First, regarding the foreign policy of Egypt, there are some fixed points, including protecting the Palestinian cause and supporting the Palestinian cause until we are able to achieve the Palestinian cause on the borders of 76. This goal, Egyptian goal, was confirmed in all the previous occasions and also during the decades. In addition to the goal, or under that title, there were a lot of Egyptian efforts that has been done during the previous decade and since the beginning of the Palestinian cause. Egypt has been involved in supporting the Palestinian people in all the negotiations, when there was peace operations. Even in the absence of the peace operations, the Egyptian rule was there supporting the Palestinian people in order to interfere for mediation and for de-escalation. Even while the occupation forces have been doing this escalation, the Egyptian rule was there supporting the Palestinian people. And since the first moments, And even in the difficult times,
Well,
the
unfortunately,
Egyptian
sir, I have to
rulers
sort of cut you off there because we're running out of time for the Egypt Bulletin. But thank you so much for your insights. That was the chairman of the board of Al Ahram Foundation, Dr. Mohammed Faiz Farahat. Thank you so much for your insights. And now moving on, Egypt has condemned statements by Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich calling for the imposition of Israeli sovereignty and settlement expansion in the West Bank. Egypt stresses that these remarks reflect Israel's rejection of a regional peace and its continued policy of arrogance. The country also emphasized the international responsibility to protect the inalienable rights for Palestinian people, particularly right to self-determination. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we've been covering. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attends the opening session of the high-level discussions at the UN Climate Summit COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. The Extraordinary Arab and Islamic Summit endorses the Egyptian-Qatari mediation efforts to secure a ceasefire. And Egypt condemns statements by Israeli Finance Minister calling for the imposition of Israeli sovereignty and settlement expansion in the West Bank. That's all for now. Remember to stay updated by following Qnews for the latest developments.